This is the Church of Climate Scientology's Inquisition. So the totalitarian Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio Cortez and
now, just to be clear, she doesn't yet identify as the totalitarian party or a member of the Church of Climate Scientology.
No, I just want to be on the cutting edge of accurate description. And another Congresswoman, Shelley Pingree, wrote a letter to Google, Facebook, and Microsoft where they're criticizing them for sponsoring a Students for Liberty LibertyCon conference because there was a session that, in their words, was denying established science on climate change. And let me just read you 2 paragraphs from this letter because it gives you a flavor of what they sent. They say, "We understand that sponsorship of an event or conference is a common occurrence and that these sponsorships do not automatically indicate that the company endorses the variety of political viewpoints that may be presented at these events. However, given the magnitude and urgency of the climate crisis that we are now facing, we find it imperative to ensure that the climate-related views espoused at LibertyCon do not reflect the values of your companies going forward. As you are well aware, the spreading of misinformation can be dangerous to our society. Today's coordinated campaign to deny climate change or to put a positive spin on its effects is not unlike that of the tobacco companies which once sought to discredit their products linked to cancer. Their propaganda kept the nation from addressing a public health crisis for years, leading to many preventable deaths. We cannot afford to make the same mistake again with climate change." And so just a little context, what do we know about this denial of climate science? Well, it's that at Students for Liberty conference, one of the attendees was this group, the CO2 Coalition, and they put on a talk amongst many other talks titled, "Let's Talk About Not Talking. Should there be no debate that industrial carbon dioxide is causing climate catastrophe?" So that, in the words of these congresswomen, is denying established climate science. And I think you get a sense of my reaction. I don't even know where to start with this, except to say, I find this very disturbing.
Well, one thing about when you hear the expression spreading of misinformation, so everyone who censors says that they are doing so to prevent the spread of misinformation. The people who censor people don't say, "Oh, we're censoring so that we can prevent the spread of accurate information." They always say, "Yes, we're protecting you. We're protecting truth." And it can be different kinds of alleged truth in their minds, but whatever it is, so it could be of a religion or of a scientific establishment or of a political establishment, but that's always the justification. So this is where it's important to understand the role of government in a society and why our founding fathers very wisely relegated the government to protecting our rights, including our right to express ideas, often, which is the right to free speech. But the core of it is that we can conceive of and express ideas and then share them with other people. Now, when we do that, we can express false ideas and even damaging ideas. But the key is that unless we're free to express ideas, then people in the society have no chance of reaching the truth, and then they will get some completely warped version of reality imposed on them by different kinds of dictators. So I just want to make the point on principle that even if people are getting this issue totally wrong on climate, it's crucial that they be free to, and then the people who think that they're right about science should address them in open debate and make clear why their views are so correct. Now, often when you're dealing with censorship, the people engaging in censorship do not have a very good argument. That's why they're engaging in censorship. And this is certainly the phenomenon with the climate catastrophists. They have this very vague idea, oh yeah, fossil fuels cause climate change. And then they equate that with climate catastrophe. And they just want to say, oh yeah, everybody agrees with us and everybody agrees with our policies, which now include outlawing non-fossil fuel forms of energy for at least electricity generation within the next decade and a half. So this is just, there are a bunch of different issues here, but the one that strikes me most is that this is a totalitarian or fascist policy, and that whatever people believe on scientific issues, they should not believe in the suppression of discussion of scientific issues. The other thing, as a procedural point that's very important to the protection of rights, is that she is a member of the legislative branch. She is a congressman. I hope a short-lived congressman, but she's a congressman. So her job is to make laws that are consistent with individual rights. Now, there's no chance of her advocating laws that are consistent with individual rights because she doesn't believe in individual rights, but at least she has to, she's not supposed to dictate behavior. She's not supposed to enforce laws. So in the past, I've been very critical when attorneys general have tried to suppress speech, but at least their job is they're part of the executive branch, whereas her job is legislative. So the idea that she can just write with any kind of veiled threat to Facebook or Google or anyone else, I guess it was, Google, Facebook, and Microsoft, saying that, hey, I don't want you to express these views, that's a double violation. So, of course, we've talked a lot about what's wrong with her particular views, but the most specifically offensive thing to me, and where that's why I'm starting with that here, is that she's just completely attacking the right to free speech.
Yeah, I just want to underscore that, because I think she or any defender might say, well, look, there's no threat there. It's just saying, like, we want to know that you're on board with us on climate change. And I think there's two things that are really relevant. One is just her sheer position, that this is coming from a lawmaker co-signed by another lawmaker that have the power to haul you in front of Congress and pass all sorts of laws. And then, like, the specific comparison to tobacco companies, which is, I mean, like, they were sued, and, you know, these fossil fuel companies are under threat of being sued. So, like, this is, I think, clearly an attempt to silence any even, you know, minor support and indirect support of anybody who challenges them on climate.
By the way, I should say something about the tobacco companies. So there are a couple of fallacies in the analogy. So one is that with the tobacco companies, well, this is a whole big issue, so I'll try to be brief on it. But one thing is that with the climate issue, the essential harm being claimed by people who are saying that there's a climate catastrophe problem is something that the fossil fuel companies have no specific expertise on. It's a totally global scientific kind of phenomenon. The only thing they have expertise on is human adaptation and how energy can play a vital role in human adaptation, or even stronger, human mastery of climate, which is something I've talked a lot about. So one thing, there's no issue of, oh, they're suppressing something. They had this secret information and they didn't disclose it. There's no even possibility of that. Whereas with tobacco companies, there could be the possibility of suppressing, or in some way really being fraudulent about the nature of science and what had been discovered with their own tests. Whereas there's no comparable test that a fossil fuel company can do on the global climate. But the other thing is that tobacco companies have every right to engage in a debate on, in particular, the magnitude of negative consequences from smoking. And just watching how this debate occurs, I'm sure people are too afraid of smoking in certain ways, just because there's no respect for magnitude at all. There's no acknowledgement that, okay, this doesn't always cause cancer. There's, as far as I know, there's a strong correlation and thus probably some kind of significant causal relationship. But it's very important to know the extent of it and to know how many cigarettes does it take. For instance, I've heard that people who stop smoking once they're 40 don't have any additional cancer risk. These are the kinds of things that come out. These nuances come out. Or what's the danger, if any, of smoking a pipe? Like, I've never actually smoked one cigarette or anything, so it's not a very personal issue for me, and I don't feel like developing the habit. But that is an issue that's important to understand with precision, so that people can make choices. And it's totally necessary for vested interests to weigh in if they think that they have an opinion they want others to hear, and then people can discount their opinion if they think that it's clearly being biased by certain factors. But we need, with any issue of a threat, you need a very precise discussion of it. And open debate is part of what gives you that precise discussion.